Hey there, all you news junkies out there. It's December 18th, 2024, and man, oh man, do we have a wild day of news to dive into. We're talking government funding drama, Elon Musk facing some serious heat, and potential shakeups in Congress. It's going to be a bumpy ride, so buckle up.
No kidding, it's one of those days where you can barely keep up with all the twists and turns.
Right, so let's kick things off with this government funding deal. It was a total nail-biter, but Congress managed to avoid a shutdown, at least for now. They reached a deal just days before that December 20th deadline.
And the interesting thing here is, this is actually the second time this year they've had to resort to this kind of stopgap measure. Remember back in October when we were all on edge? It seems like they're just kicking the can further and further down the road.
Yes, so break it down for us. What's in this $30 billion package that bought them some time?
Well, $20 billion of that is going towards disaster relief, which is crucial considering all the recent hurricanes and wildfires. And then the other $10 billion is for agricultural assistance, which was a big priority for the Republicans.
$30 billion. That's a lot of money. And it only gets them to March. What happens then?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? With the 2024 elections coming up, I don't think anyone expects to see a long-term funding solution anytime soon. This deal might have stopped a shutdown for now, but it definitely hasn't solved the bigger political problems.
Okay, deep dive listeners out there. Just a quick reminder, a stopgap measure is basically a temporary fix, like a Band-Aid solution. And the fiscal year is the government's accounting period, which runs from October to September. Now, why should you care? Because these short-term funding deals create uncertainty for government agencies, for people who rely on government services. It affects everyone.
Exactly. It really raises questions about the stability of these crucial programs.
Right. Let's switch gears to a story that feels like something out of a sci-fi thriller. Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, is facing not one, not two, but three federal investigations.
And the allegations are pretty serious. The government is concerned that he might have violated security protocols, especially when it comes to disclosing meetings with foreign leaders.
Wait, hold on. Isn't Musk known for being super transparent? Especially on social media.
That's the irony here. His open communication style, which has gotten him a lot of attention, seems to be clashing with the strict rules around national security.
So what exactly triggered these investigations?
Well, it seems like the alarm bells started ringing after reports surfaced of Musk meeting with foreign leaders, including Vladimir Putin, without disclosing those meetings to the proper authority.
Whoa, that's a pretty big deal.
It is, especially because over 400 SpaceX employees have top security clearance. That means they have access to incredibly sensitive information, and any kind of security breach could have major consequences.
Okay, for anyone who needs a refresher, security clearance is basically a stamp of approval from the government, saying you can access classified information. There are different levels of clearance, and the higher your level, the more sensitive the information you can access. So in Musk's case, this could put his own security clearance at risk, but also the clearance of his employees and potentially even the future of SpaceX.
It definitely has far-reaching implications.
And it makes you wonder, could this affect SpaceX's military contracts or their plans for space exploration?
That's a very real possibility. International partners might think twice about working with SpaceX if there are concerns about their security.
Okay, so we've got government funding hanging in the balance and Elon Musk caught up in this security web. But buckle up, news junkies, because our next story takes us straight to Capitol Hill, where the drama is just getting started.
Things are getting messy when even a deal to avoid a government shutdown manages to create this much chaos.
You're telling me conservative Republicans are furious with Speaker Mike Johnson over how this funding deal went down?
They're saying he caved to the Democrats, calling this $110 billion package a dumpster fire of overspending and unnecessary concessions.
And remember, this is all happening just weeks before Johnson faces a big leadership vote on January 3rd. Talk about bad timing.
It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. The House Freedom Caucus, which is that group of hardline conservative representatives, is leading the charge against Johnson.
For anyone who needs a reminder, the House Freedom Caucus is a group of Republicans who are known for their very conservative views and their willingness to challenge leadership. Representative Chip Roy from Texas has been one of the most vocal opponents of Johnson and this deal.
They're basically saying that this big chunk of money for hurricane relief is like giving the Biden administration a blank check.
So what's the plan here? Are they just venting? Or are they actually trying to kick Johnson out?
Oh, they're definitely not holding back. They're actively trying to get enough votes to replace Johnson in that upcoming leadership vote.
And this is bigger than just a little argument within the party. This fight could have a ripple effect on the Republican Party's unity and their ability to get anything done in the future.
Right, absolutely. If they can't agree on something as basic as funding the government, it really makes you wonder if they can govern effectively at all.
So let me get this straight. We've got a temporary funding deal that's causing more problems than it solves. We've got Elon Musk potentially facing some serious consequences. And we've got a power struggle brewing within the Republican Party. Am I missing anything?
Well, we haven't even touched on that recent leadership shakeup in the House. There's a lot more to unpack.
Okay, news junkies.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. We've got a lot more ground to cover, so stick with us as we dive deeper into these fascinating stories.
Speaking of shakeups, we got to talk about what happened in the House. There is a pretty interesting situation with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh yeah, AOC? She made a bold move trying to become the chair of the House Oversight Committee.
That would have been huge. She's definitely not afraid to shake things up.
No, she's not. But ultimately, she wasn't successful. The position went to Representative Jerry Connolly from Virginia.
Yeah, Connolly. He's a pretty seasoned guy in the House.
So what do you think gave him the edge in this race?
Probably a combination of things. His experience for sure. He's been on the committee for a while. And he has a reputation for being more of a moderate, someone who can work across the aisle.
So what does this mean for AOC's future?
It's definitely a setback, but she's still a major force in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. I wouldn't count her out just yet.
This whole leadership shuffle in the House, plus the conservative rebellion against Speaker Johnson, it really paints a picture of a Congress that's kind of in turmoil. What do you think the bigger implications of all this infighting are?
Well, it makes you wonder if they can actually function as a governing body.
Yeah.
Can they pass laws? Can they address the country's problems?
It's like we're stuck in this cycle of partisan gridlock and temporary fixes.
And that leaves a lot of Americans feeling pretty disillusioned with the whole political process.
It's a lot to take in. So if we take a step back for a moment, what are the key takeaways here? What should people be watching closely in the next few weeks and months?
Well, first of all, keep an eye on that Elon Musk situation. Will he lose his security clearance? How will all this affect his companies and his plans for space exploration?
And then there's that leadership vote for Speaker Johnson on January 3rd. That's going to be a big one. Will he survive the challenge from the conservatives in his own party? What will it mean for the Republicans as a whole?
And as we get closer to the 2024 elections, will all these divisions within both parties keep shaping the political landscape? Will they influence the outcome of the presidential race? There are a lot of questions that will be answered in the coming months.
It's like watching a political thriller unfold in real time.
Absolutely. And the stakes are incredibly high.
For anyone who's feeling overwhelmed by all this news, I think it's important to remember that staying informed is crucial. And don't be afraid to have conversations with people who have different opinions than you. It can help you understand these complex issues better.
I agree. It's in times like these, when there's so much uncertainty and division, that we need to come together and listen to each other and try to find some common ground.
Now, before we wrap up, I have one final question for our listeners to think about. Think about all these things we've been talking about, the funding fight, Musk's investigations, the leadership challenges. It's like they all point to this bigger trend of instability in politics, in national security, everywhere.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another, and the consequences just keep spreading. I think what we're seeing is this erosion of trust. Trust in institutions, trust in leaders, trust in the systems that are supposed to protect us.
And when that trust starts to disappear, things can get pretty scary.
Right.
More polarization, less civil discourse. It becomes harder to solve problems.
Exactly. And in a world that's becoming more and more interconnected and unpredictable, that inability to take action could have huge consequences for all of us.
Well, what's the answer? How do we rebuild that trust, that sense of working together towards something bigger?
And honestly, that's the question that keeps me up at night. I think it's going to take a lot of effort on multiple fronts. We need strong leadership, of course, but we also need transparency and a willingness to have those difficult conversations that we tend to avoid. We need to find ways to bridge those divides and work towards common goals.
That's a really important point. And for our listeners, I think the takeaway here is pretty clear. Stay informed, stay involved, and don't be afraid to ask those tough questions. Hold your leaders accountable, demand transparency, and most importantly, be part of the solution.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We all have a role to play in shaping the future we want.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into these wild and crazy stories. But the conversation doesn't end here. Keep those questions coming. Keep those minds working. And we'll be back tomorrow with more insights and analysis.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Thanks for tuning in to the Videntis.